Hey, welcome to Typevolution. In this video, I'm going to talk about sensing as a superpower. Jungian sensing is very, very different from just regular sensing. It's the same with Jungian feeling, Jungian thinking, and I've made videos about this. You can check out my video description to learn more about this. I've provided some links for you to some videos there. Some of my favorite people in the world are sensing types, and they are intelligent, let me tell you. Or, well, I'm not going to tell you in this video, but they are smart people. It's not just intuitive types who are smart. But if it's not just about the senses, then what is sensing really about? So I'm going to share with you what is sensing in the Jungian sense, also the difference with extroverted sensing, introverted sensing, and some caveats at the end. So I would be mistaken if I didn't mention the senses. Yes, sensing does involve the senses when it comes to experiencing sensorial information in the world or with themselves. It's not just having senses that make you a sensing type, but you have a heightened metabolism, mental metabolism of sensing if you're a sensing type. Your senses not just perceive information in the physical world or even mentally to some extent or physically in their own bodies. This experience of sensorial information is brought to another level. It is more refined, at least on average at baseline level, if they are not too blocked, too traumatized, etc., etc. I will talk more about the caveats by the end of this video. So it's not just about the senses themselves, but rather what your mental cognition does with that information. Sensing types in general are better at using the information that they receive from their senses, right? The sight, smell, sound, taste, feeling, etc. Like that kind of feeling with your hands. They're just way better at using that information. And intuitive types, of course, they also have senses. They can also perceive things, but usually they misread their senses to some extent. Usually the information they gather from them is to some extent incomplete or faulty, or they don't really know what to do with that information practically, but also on a mental and emotional level. This is even the case if your senses are all working, if you're not disabled. Intuitives have a certain lack in this area. Right, let's go into extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. Extroversion deals with the world outside of yourself, the externalities. And extroverted sensing is one of the most, if not the most, objectifying function. Everything is an object that you can mold, you can notice, you can see, you can experience, you can shape, you can influence, you can pressure, you can observe. So there's different ways how it can manifest. It's not always very aggressive. It can be expressed in an aggressive way, but it can also be expressed in a more receptive manner for just the observation. But it's still objectifying at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be in a negative way, but it can be. It can go either way, really. So you yourself are also perceived as an object to mold. It can literally be about your appearance, but it can also just be your character or how you behave, how you physically move in the world and things like that. In that sense, extroverted sensing, because it's both extroverted and physical due to the sensing aspect, contains the most energy. So in turn, people who have strong extroverted sensing, especially ESFP and ECP, tend to have higher energy levels. The stronger it is, the higher it is. Extroverts in general have higher energy levels compared to introverts, but this is especially emphasized if the extrovert is a sensing type. And vice versa, also if the extrovert is an intuitive type, the energy aspect, the physical energy, is less emphasized, and they can have lower energy compared to, other extroverted sensing types, other ES types, even ESFJ and ECJ. Extroverted intuition is similar in the sense it's extroverted, so it also sees the world and focuses more on the externalities of things. But here, the world is seen rather as a playground of ideas, opposed to a battlefield that needs to be conquered or dealt with. Battlefield is also, I have to say, a more masculine expression of it, but it depends. It's not just necessarily a battlefield. I'm kind of exaggerating here. This applies especially to ST types, ESTPs, ISTPs to some extent. They see the world like that. With ESFP and ISFP, because the feeling component makes them more focused on ethical things, it's more about like politics, social maneuvering. But there's also an emphasis on seeing hierarchies, power dynamics, and things like that, because extrovert sensing is so much about energy, and then also tied to that power. Hierarchies and power dynamics tend to play a bigger role for extrovert sensing types. Not always, but it is a common component of it. Extrovert sensing is also the function that is the most stereotypically superhero-like, because you see superheroes fighting in combat, doing impressive physical feats, and that's very classic of strong extrovert sensing use. They are the most able to be very impressive physically in that sense. Not every person who is going to be an extrovert sensing type, even as a first function, is going to be extremely impressive physically or kinesthetically. Like I said, I will talk more about that in the caveats section, but this is just one expression of extrovert sensing. It can be literally physical, but it can also be more indirect. Like I said, when it comes to social dynamics, politics, hierarchies, power, energy, and things like that. It doesn't always mean that you're going to look like a Greek god or whatever. It can mean that, but it doesn't always mean that. All right, introverted sensing. So if extroverted sensing is physical energy incarnate or objectifying, then introverted sensing, the introverted component makes everything more abstract. Introversion is an abstraction because it is focused on the internal. It is more subjective. External, more objective. Internal, more subjective. And this creates an abstraction. So introverted sensing, even though it concerns the senses, it adopts a much more abstract, almost intuitive quality, you could say. Intuitive in the sense how we use it in the common way, in the common sense term. A lot of gut feeling is actually about introverted sensing. Gut feeling, the term itself just sounds very much like introverted sensing to me, because it's literally about feeling with your gut, which is sensing. I know that there are a lot of overlaps when people say gut feeling and they mean intuition and things like that, but that's because introverted sensing is introverted perceiving, and introverted perceiving deals with unconscious processes. Both introverted intuition and introverted sensing are probably the most unconscious cognitive functions you can think of or you can deal with. Both deal with the unconscious. With introverted intuition, it is more about unconscious concepts, to some extent also imagery, symbolism, and things like that. Versus introverted sensing, it's more unconscious, also hunches, but these hunches are always tied to the physical. So what you can often hear with people when they have strong introverted sensing, that they can, let's say they see somebody and then they get a physical reaction from that person and they just feel like something is wrong with that person. And that's because their senses have scanned the person and it has become unconscious. But the introverted sensing, it's almost like a memory field in their heads, or like a memory database that is connected to their feelings, to their physical experience. So they might be able to scan somebody, see them, and in the unconscious processing of introverted perception can come to the conclusion something is off. It feels off. And it literally feels physically off. So then people say, oh, I have this intuition, this gut feeling that something is off with this person. And this can be a very physical experience. So this is where people often confuse introverted intuition and introverted sensing for one another. Both are dealing with hunches. Both are dealing with things that are unconscious. But with introverted sensing, you can always reduce it back to a physical experience. Okay, let me first write down some things to summarize. Just senses? No. It's not just senses. It's how the information from the senses is mentally metabolized. The information is dealt with on a higher level than compared to intuitive types. Extrovert sensing, it's the most about energy and objects. And really anything can be considered an object or energy. And it doesn't have to be literal objects, it can also be digital. And introverted sensing is the most like gut feeling, literally. I've written blog articles. Also make sure to check them out in the comment section where I describe more the light and dark side of both of these functions, because obviously objectifying can be very bad. And also gut feeling can be bad if you end up being overly psychosomatic and you have all these kinds of pains in your body, which just stem from unresolved emotions, for example, which is very common with SF types in particular, and ISFP and ISFJ to be specific. Okay, caveats. All right, like I said in my previous video, traumas. So watch that video, but basically physical trauma is gonna block this. Physical trauma especially is gonna block introverted sensing, to be specific. Because, let me say here, physical can also block extrovert sensing, but especially introverted sensing, because physical trauma is gonna make you feel unsafe in your own body. And that in turn can mess with your gut feeling. So you might not be able to fully relate to this if you have suffered from physical trauma. And you might still be a sensing type, but you just need to overcome the trauma. Another caveat is, how strong is the function? Is it your first or second function? Because that also plays a role. First or second, question mark. So basically, this, what I've explained here is going to apply the best to ESFP, ESTP, and ISFJ and ISTJ. Let me just make it like this. In MBTI terms. So basically any type that has extrovert sensing as a first function, introvert sensing as a first function, on average. When it comes to ESFJ, ECJ, ISFP, and ISTP, their first function is either feeling or thinking. And that in turn means that they won't be able to overly identify with this. But there's also exceptions there. Depends also what your subtype is. And I have made videos about the subtype theory. My subtype theory, the one I follow, is from Socionic, but there's 3 subtype system, not 4, not 2, where you can have a subtype of the first function, the second function, or neither, which is like the 0 subtype or neutral, I guess. I'm not gonna talk more about subtype in this video because it's gonna be too much detail. But either way, you have to determine, is sensing actually your strongest function? And like I said, this is going to depend on baseline MBTI or Jungian type, and then also what is your subtype. If your subtype is a sensing function, then you will also relate more to this. At the end of the day, all sensing types have sensing as a superpower, but if sensing is your second function, it's going to have a bit of an on-off quality, and you won't feel entirely connected with it at all times. Mostly if it's your first function, or if it is a boosted function in you based on your subtype, you will be able to relate the most to this. Okay, actually I forgot a caveat, so I'm gonna give it to you as a bonus. Body, what if you are, like I said earlier, disabled, or you are not athletic? how can I say, like, not athletic. So you can be a sensing type who has a disabled body. You can be a sensing type who's not athletic. I have often gotten clients or people talking to me who were like, yeah, well, I'm not that great at insert any kind of physical activity. I'm not great at dancing. I'm not great at sports. I'm not great at this and that. Well, like your kinesthetic intelligence, your body's physical capabilities are, yes, genetic, and they can be separate from how your brain is, how your brain works, just how your body is. It can be separate, so you can be not athletic and still be a sensing type. You see that with, for example, with people like Donald Trump. Maybe that's not the best example, but I would still say he's a good example, for the sake of argument, of a person who has strong extrovert sensing without being necessarily super athletic or super artistic. Yeah, that's another one. You don't have to be as artistic either. But usually there is something. Usually how you deal with energies, with objects, or with your gut feeling is still your thing. You just have to find it. But these things don't exclude the possibility of being a sensing type. I just want to make that clear. Either way, no matter where your sensing is positioned, you could say, as a sensing type, you will greatly benefit from utilizing your sensing in some way, shape, or form. Because this is where your superpower is, where your proficiency lies in. And we need this in our society. There's a lot of debates about how many sensing types are out there. I do believe that it seems like there are more sensing types than intuitive types on average. And that's because we need this, because this is useful, actually. We do need these people in the world. And if you neglect this, it's going to have negative consequences, not just for the world, but also for yourself. You're not going to feel like you are in your power, in your personal power. It's like the superhero who doesn't accept the fact that they should be a superhero and that's their gift. It's the same if you don't accept that you're a sensing type. Now, I can understand that you might be very confused right now. You might think, well, am I a sensing type or not? Or you might just be generally unsure about your personality type. You can get typed by me. You can find all the information on that on typevolution.com/services. So I can type you. I can give you also a guide based on your type. If you do a full typing with me, full live typing, you will get a guide on, your personality, including your cognitive functional superpowers. And I'm also offering coaching. So if you want to improve your quality of life and use your sensing more, you can also do type coaching with me. I hope this is gonna remove some of the stigma. I'm really tired of it. Oh, make sure to also like and share if you found this useful, because then we can spread the word. All right, have a good day and bye.